dogs and cats, children and babies. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Driveline Academy podcast, the world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast. I am your marble mouth host, Devin Morgan, Director Youth Baseball at Driveline, founder of the Driveline Academy. And I am unfortunately once again not joined by my brother, my partner, my co-host, Driveline Academy International Man of Mystery, Jeremy Techtail, because he's taking the week off. So instead, you have me again doing one of these solo pods, but I promise this one is not going to be a long-winded rant about some sort of esoteric, emotional conversation that probably has more to do with parenting than it does with baseball, but instead we are going to dive into the depths of bat speed training today. And for those of you that are joining us on an audio-visual platform, you will notice that we have some new toys, which I'm going to get to in a second. First thing, housekeeping. axbat.com, code DL20. Get yourself 20% off of all of your bat and ball stick sport products. D as in Dungeness, L as in longitude, 20, DL20. It's going to get you 20% off. Axbat has a bunch of new stuff coming out, so you want to use that discount code for new stuff. Great. You want to use that discount code for old stuff? That's great too. Only other housekeeping note that I have, obviously, is the Skills at Scale Complete Youth Baseball Training Manual is out and available right now. So if you've been tuned into this podcast and you are staring at the start of your season practices dead in the face, and you don't feel like they have been fun enough, you don't think they've been engaging enough, you don't really have a good idea of how to plan and execute that type of thing, you don't know how to recruit parents to help you do it, Skills at Scale Complete Youth Baseball Training Manual, it's out right now. Why would I recommend my own book? Well, look, I mean, you guys know that I deal with like a decent amount of anxiety and self-doubt, but I'm pretty confident that this book, which as per usual is like somewhere right around there behind me, it's just everything that I've learned doing this thing for like, I guess what's going to be 14 years this year. The idea is that you can engage with the book however you want. If you feel really confident in your ability to teach hitting and throwing, and you just need information about kind of like how to build practice plans and have them be efficient and how effective and engaging and how you can get more reps with basically less time, hey, that book's going to serve that purpose for you. If you really want to dive into the weeds of the ecological dynamics of skill acquisition and how that applies to what is it actually going to take to help your kid get better, I got that for you too. I got drill videos, I got example 6-week schedules or practice plans, I got micro schedules, I got macro schedules, I got a yearly training plan, I got a long-term athletic development library. I mean, you guys that listen to the pod, you've heard me regurgitate this thing over and over, so hopefully you know it's good. I think it's really good. I wrote it for myself because 14 years ago when I started doing this thing, if I had been able to use this book instead of some of the other books that I had that were, I think, decently okay about teaching the game of baseball and maybe not as effective about the actual weeds of like, what does that really mean when you're trying to help develop skill? What does it mean to really develop, period? What does that process look like? What are some game environments that are actually fun and engaging for kids to be able to do that rather than doing the same drills and team practice configuration that I did in the early 80s to early 90s or whatever it was. You can learn all that stuff just by buying the book. So anyways, Skills at Scale Complete Youth Baseball Training Manual, it's out, drivelinebaseball.com. Now, normally when I do these things, I would go into the next part of housekeeping, which would be this thing right on my left, which is our Youth Underload Smash Trainer. But I have its big brother here today. So what we want to talk about is basically the big brother of the Youth Underload Smash Trainer, which is our Power Bat. And our Power Bat is right here. I'm so happy with how this thing came out. I really, really, really am. And I think it's going to be good. But let's talk about why. And to talk about why, I wanted to kind of walk you guys through the process of why we wanted to make a simplified bat speed training system for youth, and kind of how we went about doing that and what we thought about. So let's dive into it. So one of the things that I don't know if we've been like super public about is we have what we call internally is like our bat fitting database. And our bat fitting database has somewhere north of 500 bats in it. Um, I might have to edit this if it takes me long enough. You know what? I'm just not going to like heat check that number. Anyways, point being, so we have a bat fitting database. Well, Devin, what does a bat fitting database mean? What are we talking about? What we mean is collecting measurements on the physical characteristics and the swing weight of these bats that is different than like what's just advertised on the barrel, right? When you guys go to buy bats, just like me, you generally kind of start with length, right? I have an idea for my player of what the appropriate length for their bat is relative to either what they're swinging currently or maybe the growth that I'm expecting them to go through in the next, let's say, like 6 to 9 months, right? So I start with the length, and then I go into like, well, what's the weight? What's the drop? Youth baseball, again, let's reset the landscape, right? You know, we're typically talking about bats that start around drop 10, meaning that they are 10 ounces lighter than they are long. So the way that I explained this whole idea of swing weight to my wonderful mother, who I had a long conversation with this weekend, Mom, I love you, was, hey, you know, if one of my kids is swinging a 30-inch bat, and then a drop 10, 30 inches, 20 ounces. Again, for those of you guys and girls that have been coaching youth baseball, you're like, yeah, Devin, I get it. But we do have some new parents who might be a little bit mystified with this stuff, so I want to kind of like get all the way into it. So the first thing is basically just that, right? It's understanding that the way that we think about these bats is typically just from a perspective of how long is it and what is its total weight. Okay, and that weight is typically in the form of a drop, the difference between the length and weight. The fundamental issue here is that there isn't like a uniform way that the weight of a bat is distributed. Let me try to make that make a little bit more sense. Think about what you see if you go to like justbats.com, right? I mean, when I'm buying a new bat for one of my kids who, and I'm not using AxeBat code DL20, I'm probably just going to go to justbats.com. I think Just Bats has pretty incredible customer service. I like the way that they run their business. They ship fast. Hey, it's everything I'm looking for. When I go into justbats.com, and you can do this thing too. You can play this game, right? Take a look at the bats that they have, and on the left-hand side, if you're looking on the desktop, or I think at the top, if you're looking on mobile, you're going to see like a filtering box. One of the things you can filter for is, I guess, what I would describe as kind of like bat characteristics that are different than length and weight. You're going to see a box that says like end loaded. And then you're going to see another box that says balanced. And those might be the only two boxes you'll see. The issue here is, again, thinking back to what's displayed on the barrel of these bats, the information that commonly gets communicated to us, consumers, is length and weight, right? How long is it? How much does it weigh? But think about that Just Bats box. When you can check that box that says end loaded, you're going to see very different bats than would you if you check that box that says balanced. And the reason there is because what you're talking about is basically like swing feel, right? Do I want a bat that feels end loaded, meaning that the majority of the weight, or well, maybe not the majority, more of the weight is distributed in the barrel of the bat towards the end, right? AKA end loaded. Or does it feel more balanced, meaning that the weight is distributed throughout the entire barrel? And really, what that basically gets at is this more technical idea of what's called swing weight, otherwise known as moment of inertia. For any like super OG driveline aficionados, some of you might recall a video that I did on Driveline Plus many moons ago talking about bat speed. And I made a comment about bats that was fundamentally misinformed. I didn't know enough information. And I said, hey, when we're talking about bat speed, really what it is force equals mass times acceleration, right? I I was like halfway smart. And we actually had a Plus customer who reached out and was like, hey, actually, they didn't say, hey, dummy, but like, I mean, they should have, because I said something that was just like fundamentally wrong. I hadn't learned enough. They said, hey, it's not just a force times force equals mass times acceleration. It's not just mass that you need to consider about these things. You need to consider their swing weight, otherwise known as moment of inertia. So because I had someone coach me up about this idea, let me try to bring that to you guys. So the idea with moment of inertia, and I think when I say swing weight, let's just like substitute those two words right in there, right? Swing weight is an expression of basically how weight is distributed in a bat over the length of the barrel. So the higher the swing weight, but technically the higher the moment of inertia, would mean that there is more of the weight that is towards the end of the barrel, which, again, the important part about this is it's away from the center of the axis of rotation. So where's the center of the action of rotation? In a bat, well, it's where we engage with it, right? It's how we grip it in the hands. So if the center of the rotation of center of the axis of rotation is here, where I'm gripping the barrel, where I'm gripping the bat in the grip, the more weight that is further away from this point, the higher the moment of inertia, or I guess the heavier the feeling of the swing weight is. I think I'm decently satisfied with that being something that's understandable, right? And you can compare something like our new Power Bat here to the Youth Underload Smash Bat, right? The Youth Underload Smash Bat, I can tell you, has a moment of inertia that is very, very, very low. Because not only is it just light to begin with, but the weight is distributed throughout the entire barrel, instead of it being kind of towards the end of the barrel. Again, more weight away from the center of the axis of rotation, higher the swing weight, higher the moment of inertia rating. So I think hopefully this idea of moment of inertia, swing weight makes sense. And I think the interesting thing, and the thing that we want to continue to learn about, is what's the defining physical characteristic of players who actually like an end-loaded bat and can perform with it and swing well with it? Because obviously, look, I can tell you that there is a ton of difference as observed in our bat fitting database, which as of this particular moment has 774 bats in it. As much as there is variance in the swing weight of bats, there is probably just as much, if not, no, definitively, there is more variance when it comes to biological presentation of human beings, and specifically kids, right? You guys know what I'm going to say next. Kids are not everybody. Small adults. Kids aren't small adults. They are physiologically immature. Their coordination systems are immature. Their proprioceptive systems are immature. Proprioception being how accurate I am with moving my body in space. And if all those things are true, I think one of the exciting things we're going to be able to get to learn about is what do the strength and swing characteristics of a kid who swings an end-loaded bat well, how do they differ from a player who really can only find success with what we would generally term as like a balanced bat? Okay. So did we decently set the table for like this conversation about swing weight, moment of inertia and stuff? I hope so. So this is our Power Bat. I will tell you right now, this is the 32-inch version, and it is a 32-inch, 32-ounce bat. That sounds like a lot. That's a drop zero, right? And we've had conversations before on this podcast talking about like 13 and 14U players who are staring at the BB Core standard, right, which are high school competition bats intended for high school age players that are a drop 3. They are 3 ounces lighter than they are long. And we've talked a lot about young kids who have to swing those type of bats but are fundamentally ill-equipped to swing them because of various strength deficiencies, right? The strength that you need to be able to swing a drop 3 bat. And from that perspective, it's logical to say, well, hey, Devin, explain to me why you are making a youth power bat that is a drop 0 when there is concern about older kids, or maybe not older kids, but like 12 or 13-year-olds, teenagers, swinging a drop 3 bat. To which I will say, again, this is why swing weight is important. This is why understanding bats in terms of moment of inertia is really important. And the thing I will point you to is this dongle right here. I mean, I suppose there's a better technical word for it, but we called it dongle in the manufacturing, the prototyping process. So we're going to call it a dongle. So the thing about the power bat that we're coming out with is, yes, it is a drop 0. So the 30-inch is going to be 30 inches long and 30 ounces. The 32 is 32 inches long and 32 ounces. But the critical thing about this bat is the dongle, in the way that we've used the dongle to distribute more of the overall weight of this bat closer to the center of the axis of rotation. And by doing so, we can give kids a heavy bat that they can still train ballistically with, meaning that they can move it fast enough to train in the fashion that has been demonstrated through a variety of peer-reviewed research studies that is critical for bat speed training. It's all because of the way that the distribution of weight is. It's all because of the swing weight and how we define that in this bat. So let's talk about it. So what we used to kind of come to the point of making this thing was the data that we had in our bat fitting database. Because the bat fitting database has, 774 bats in it, a decent chunk of youth bats in there, we were able to come up with some decently informed perspective on the average moment of inertia or swing weight of youth bats at all these different configurations, right? What is the average swing weight of a 29-inch drop 10? How does that differ from the average swing weight of a 30 drop 10? How does that differ for 31s? And we did that with drop 8s, and we did that even with drop 5s. Caveat that with the drop 5 bats in the youth space, there aren't that many of them to begin with, so maybe a little bit of small sample size configuration. But again, consider the problem we're trying to solve with drop 5 bats, right? We have young players that come up in this game swinging drop 10s and drop 8s. We know that they're going to have to swing drop 3, but we feel like we need to give them some type of bridge to get there. So you end up, and this is the thing that I had to do with my own kids, is finding, these drop 5 bats that they're probably going to swing for like 6 to 9 months, because we didn't really have a good way to get them acclimated to the path of BB core without negative swing adaptations that might take place if I just dumped a BB core bat in that kid's hands to begin with. We're going to talk about negative swing adaptations in a little bit more detail later. First, I want to get through this process of how we made this thing. So anyway, so we leverage this data to kind of compile some very broad averages about swing weight for different type of game bats that all these players are swinging, right? So if you think just critically about 30-inch bats, okay, I want to give you a little bit of perspective. Let's actually, I'm going to just do this live for you guys. I'm going to make a copy of this database. We're going to start playing around with some filtering, because I can tell you one of the averages, like the average MOI or the swing weight of a 30-inch drop 10 bat that we found in our database, that number is 5,200. It is 5,225.98. And that was the average swing weight or moment of inertia of the bats in our database in that specific configuration of 30 inches, right? So what that would tell you, oh gosh, man, I'm terrified. I'm making this way too technical. But you know what? Look, man, we're the world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast for a reason, and we're going to just get into the technical side of things. 5225 for an MOI or a swing weight is that average 30-inch drop 10, okay? So 30-inch drop 8s, average is 5,500. 30-inch drop 5s, that average goes up to 6,400. So like a pretty substantial increase, right? Okay. Now consider what do we have in terms of like training tools for these kids, right? So the existing youth Axe speed training system, or I guess I should say the prior one because I believe Axe has discontinued it as well. Um, that system had two bats in it, and those bats were made in a way that they were 20% heavier based on a drop 8 standard. Okay? Um, and the thought is because all the research suggested that the appropriate way to do ballistic bat speed development is to have it be 20% over the weight of the player's game bat. Um, I'm sure that and I wasn't around for the time of the creation of the initial youth bat speed training system, and I'm sure that the men and women who did that spent a lot of time talking about MOI. But because you have all this variance in youth bats, where you've got, I mean, shoot, I've said largely this is drop 10s and drop 8s, right? But I know kids that swing drop 12s or even drop 11s, I think on the softball side can be a thing. You can find some drop 11s out there. But if your player has to swing like a 28-inch drop 12, and then a 29 drop 10, and a 30 drop 10, and a 31 drop 8, and maybe a 31 drop 5, those are like 4 or 5 different game bats you have to swing. I think you're going to have to buy, and your player will swing over this period of time to kind of like acclimate themselves to swinging a bat, period. Trying to fit the correct speed training bat along all of those different iterative stages is really, really difficult because, well, let's talk about it. The 30-inch, again, the old 30-inch bat speed trainers from Axe Bat. I can tell you the MOI of that bat is... Is anybody going to sue me for this information? I don't think anybody's going to sue me for it. No, you're not going to sue me. Okay, so let's talk about it. The 30-inch green, which is the barrel load from Axe, was a little bit. It was right around 5,700. Okay, but again, the 30-inch average in our database was 5,225. So the problem is that like that bat, the 30-inch speed training bat, was correct in its total amount of weight, right? Because it was 20% over the drop 8 standard. So that bat weighed, oh man, you guys are catching me doing live math on air. So it's a 3022 plus 2.2 plus 4.4 additional. Man. Did I tell you guys that I'm sick? You know what I shouldn't be doing when I'm sick is I definitely shouldn't be doing math. That is not the move. So that's a 22-ounce bat, and it is 20% heavier. It's 26.4 ounces. Okay. So the total distribution of the total weight of that bat was correct relative to the research-proven principles of 20% over. But because we know the average MOI of all of these different bats in a 30-inch range, that might not be the ideal stimulus to actually be at least 20% over in terms of swing weight, right? It's not quite there. The total weight is right, but the actual swing weight, it underserves it a little bit, okay? Same thing if you want to think about, and again, this is also true if you look at specifically at the 30-inch drop 8s, right? 30-inch drop 8s in our database, the average MOI or the average swing weight was right around 5,500. Okay, but if even the barrel load 30-inch speed trainer was right around 5,700-ish, that's not the 20% increase in MOI that we're actually looking for, right? It's just it's underserving it a little bit. It's the correct total weight. The actual swing weight is off a little bit. Why? I don't even want to say that it's off. It's just underserving the stimulus that those players need because of the average swing weight of their game bats. I'm terrified. This is all way too technical, and this is not going to make any sense. So you guys can jump into the comments on Spotify or YouTube and let us know. Hopefully this resonates. So because we had these average MOI figures, we were able to basically go, okay, what if we made a training bat for players to swing where they can train ballistically, but instead of just doing this very arbitrary, I don't want to say arbitrary, instead of paying less attention to swing weight than we do the total weight, let's flip it the other way around. Let's get really, really specific on the swing weight so that we can make sure that this bat can actually serve players, a broad spectrum of players, ideally for a longer period of time, and also serve them more effectively, because you have to be at least 20% overload. But, well, what if we could do more, right? What if we can add more weight but have it be manageable weight because of the way that weight is distributed? That's what we did with the power bat. So what we came up with was, all right, if that number, right, if that average MOI of our 30-inch gamers is right around 30, let's say 30-inch, drop 10s around 5225, 30-inch drop 8s around 5500. Well, what if the MOI of our 30-incher we could make and it's actually like right around like 6600, okay? We're getting the appropriate difference in terms of like the actual overload we're looking for, right? I mean, you can just take a look at that number and say, all right, where's my math? I can actually just look at the formula, right? And it's say, look, that number is appropriate in terms of its MOI because we're at least checking that box of being 20% overload. And that's the whole thing with this bat. It's just being really, really specific and really informed about the swing weight, and then making a bat that allows kids to engage with bat speed training, have it be effective, and also have it be a little bit more efficient. Because again, rather than have a two-bat system where one of those bats had all the weight at the handle, one of those weights had all the weight at the barrel, now we've got a single bat. It's got at least 20% overload, but because of the distribution of weight, you should be able to swing this thing without a bunch of negative swing adaptations. And that's, I think, the next thing I want to talk about. Bat speed training, I think, for some people can get a bad rap because if you put a really, really heavy bat in a kid's hands, and like we talked about, if they don't have kind of the requisite strength capacity to swing it well, you might see negative swing adaptations, right? You're not training something that allows you to positively affect and color your swing. We've gone past that point. I think you can think about this a little bit on the throwing side, right? I think if you, for those of you that are familiar with our pivot pick drill on the throwing side, it's a wrong foot forward drill that really focuses primarily on hip to shoulder separation, but also like a really efficient elbow spiral. And the thought is that if we can give you kind of some appropriate overload stimulus, now we are just participating in some very like Nikolai Bernstein 101 stuff, right? We're talking about the way that you can add an appropriate amount of additional load and have the body respond with a more efficient mechanical pattern. There's a reason that like we don't have 12-year-olds, 13-year-old, 15-year-olds doing like black ball pivot pickoffs, right? The reason for that is they don't have the strength capacity to actually have the positive adaptation come out of that tool. They're going to get a negative adaptation out of that tool. What you're probably going to see, and this is, again, I'm probably more of a hitting guy than I am as a throwing guy, but when you go past that point of effective overload stimulus, you're probably going to see like the elbow start staying really low, and it's going to be more of a push throw than it is like a really efficient elbow spiral. The same is true on the hitting side, right? Because we're just talking about movement adaptation. And I think some of the people that have been, what's the politically appropriate way to say this? Some of the people that have been commercially effective in youth bat speed training are selling a system where it's a single bat system and it's really heavy, but the distribution of weight is such that it is forcing, I think, and we've got some research coming to prove this, more negative swing adaptations than positive. So let's talk about this. One of the bigger competitors in youth speed training, they sell a wood bat, and it's got like a big hockey puck on the end of it, and it's heavy. It's heavy and it's cheap and it's effective. People think that it's effective. So let's just talk about it in terms of total swing weight, right? So we talked before about the MOI of the old speed trainers was like right around like 5,700. Our new one is a little bit heavier, 6,600, but because of the swing weight and the way that weight is distributed through our dongle, you're not going to see some negative adaptations from swinging this bat. So 6,600 is our number. The 30-incher from the one of the people that are pretty, again, commercially effective in that space, you guys understand, hopefully, you're smelling what I'm selling, is 8,500. That's a lot. Like, that's a lot. We are well past the point of, we're in a place where we're going to have to start getting concerned about negative swing adaptations coming out of training with that type of bat. So there's two aspects of this that I want to get into the weeds on. Again, this is just, it's you and me. Hopefully you're in a car, on a treadmill, having a cup of coffee, and I appreciate you listening to this blathering about really technical stuff about bats. So let's talk about negative swing adaptations. If you put a bat in a kid's hands and it exceeds their capacity to control their bat, those of you that have coached or those of you that have been around kids for long enough, you understand what's going to happen. It's going to be the old barrel dumper 9000 is basically what it's been termed around here. And you think you're doing the right thing because you put a heavy bat in a kid's hand, and you were on Instagram or you saw somebody on Twitter and they said bat speed was important, and you were like, yes, I agree. And they said overload training is important, and you said, yeah, man, I want to do that. And then you saw an overload bat that was really heavy, and you were like, hey, some is good, more is better, and most is best. And I grabbed the heaviest bat possible and I gave it to my kid. And then their swing went to crap, and I'm like, what happened? I don't understand. Well, the issue is, your barrel dumper 9000 is causing negative swing adaptations because of the way that the swing weight is distributed over the length of the barrel. And yes, I am aware that the large company, I don't even know that they're large, the one who's been very commercially successful, at least on Facebook, they have a hockey puck too, just like we do. But again, I'm telling you that there are just like very, very definitive differences in terms of the overall swing weight. Because when you put something that is like 1.6 higher swing weight than the average game bat for that player, there are going to be some negative adaptations that come with that swinging that bat. And look, I would love to tell you that, every parent that's going to be helping their youth player do bat speed training, they're going to do it in a way where they might observe these negative swing adaptations and they're going to coach them through it, right? Okay, well, hey, you've got a really heavy bat. I'm really worried about you just like dumping the crap out of it. So instead, I'm going to set you up with like maybe some high feeds or some high T work, so we can try to really focus on flattening that path out and working against some of the natural training effect of swinging an implement that's just like way too heavy. I would love to believe that every single one of you and every parent in this country is capable of making that observation and making that correction for their youth player. What are the odds that that's ever going to happen? Very, 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 very low. So instead, you could end up in a world where a kid is swinging a heavy bat, their swinging is getting worse, which is going to lead to bad performance, which is going to lead to these negative swing adaptations. And then you have a coach or a parent who's like, yeah, my kid did that bat speed stuff and his swing got so worse, never doing that again. We don't want that, right? Bat speed is good. Bat speed is the biggest single predictor of hitting success as far as we can tell, given the data that we have. What you don't want to do is introduce bat speed training to a kid, and because of the sheer weight and the swing weight of the bat, have that lead to them having like a lot of negative swing adaptations that are going to have some pretty significant long-term effects you might have to unpack. So when I had the chance to build a new thing, cool, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way where we can do overload training, have it serve a bunch of different players so it doesn't feel like you have to buy a new speed training bat every like 9 months, but really be hyper-focused about the configuration of the swing weight of that bat so that we don't get those negative adaptations. That's what we did. That is the biggest single differentiator between this power bat and the other options available on the market. It's just the time spent configuring the weight of this thing relative to data that we compiled about actual kids' game bats. You guys know that we train with all this data all the time, and that's great. It makes my heart very full when we can actually use this more informed perspective that we have through data to actually build a tool that's going to work for more kids, right? Look, kids need bat speed globally. If you look at competitive high school game players, if you look at competitive 13-year-olds, everybody under that has some improvement that they need to make if we want them to have a path forward to having fun and being competitive in this game. You have to address bat speed, but we need to do that in a way that it's not going to come with baggage, right? If I'm making cars, right? Let's say that I'm Porsche, and I've been iterating on the 911 chassis since 1963. If you're a Porsche file, you can probably heat check me on that. I want to say it was like 62, 63 is when the first 911s came out. I'm not going to bore you guys with a live Google search of that. And when the 911 came out, it was a rear-engine, rear-wheel drive platform. I mean, shoot, I probably should have started this idea of swing weight with all like the car analogies that I could come up with, because that's kind of my world. And over time, they have continued to iterate and iterate and iterate and iterate on a constantly better version of that configuration. And eventually, that configuration moved from being a rear-engined, rear-wheel drive to rear-engined, all-wheel drive. And nowhere along the way did they go like, hey, you know what? Let's move back to like mass market, a worse configuration of these iterations, right? Like, nobody's trying to make this thing halfway better and halfway worse. So when we had the opportunity to make a bat, when I had the opportunity to make a bat, it's like, look, I understand that bat speed training is incredibly important. I understand that the current system is too complex and it's too expensive also, because if it's two bats, then yeah, they are going to sell for 150, 200, 250 bucks. Like you got to make two of a thing. And then it's also much more complicated because, all right, well, now I can't just like give a bat to my kid and say, go swing this thing. I have to go, all right, well, you got to do one round of this one and then one round of this one and then one round of this one, right? It gets really complicated. High school players need to do that stuff. Cool, perfect, makes sense. That's an older kid. They're going to be a little bit more mature in their ability to execute this system on themselves and not need constant adult supervision. Kids are not that. So we wanted something that was simpler. We wanted something that was more cost effective, and we wanted something that was more appropriate for kids. And that's what we did this. That's what we really leveraged the data that we have using our bat fitting database and took a look at like some real world numbers of the average swing weight or moment of inertia of all these game bats, and then build something that was actually effective relative to the stimulus that these kids need without the negative adaptation that comes with crossing that threshold, that comes with giving a kid that's like 10 years old a black ball and telling them to do a pivot pickoff. Don't do that, right? But some people were doing exactly that when it comes to bat speed training, and then they got these negative swing adaptations. It's the barrel dumper 9000. You lose the barrel super early in the swing. Because of that, you don't really have any option other than have an incredibly aggressive attack angle to dig yourself out of that hole, and then you're swinging and missing all the time. Hey, I did this bat speed stuff, and like my kid's swing got worse. What the hell? What happened is that you bought the wrong thing. You bought a thing that just is inherently capable of making these negative swing adaptations, because not only of its total weight, but again, its actual swing weight is way too high for the customer. So we did the other thing. We leveraged this data that we have about the actual swing characteristics and moment of inertia of more than 700 bats. I was close to 800. Use that to inform a picture of what the average, or mean, or whatever you want to call it, the average swing weight of these kids' actual game bats is, and then constructed our training bat based on an appropriate increase in swing weight or moment inertia, so that this thing actually serves them without coming with all this negative adaptation that can come with it. And I want to just quickly also talk about some other stuff that can come with doing bat speed training with something that is just like simply way too heavy. Yes, you have the capacity for also getting all these like negative swing adaptations that come with it. The other thing is it's just possible you can't just move it fast enough. And if you can't move it fast enough, that's not ballistic speed training. That is tantamount to taking a small child, and putting a 12 to 20 pound medicine ball in their hand and say, try to turn this fast. They can't. They can't because it's too heavy. We have crossed this threshold of appropriate underload stimulus. And simply put, ballistic speed training is one thing. It is ballistic speed training. That's very different than like slow speed rotational strength training. And again, look, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm kind of an idiot, and I just try to listen and learn from smart people as much as I can. But potato, tomato, man, these two things aren't the same. There's a reason when it comes to talking about medicine ball training that we generally recommend somewhere between, like, let's say a 4 and maybe up to an 8 pound weight for kids, because you don't need. Our sport is predicated on turning really fast. All the data that we have from the launch pad would suggest that the biggest contributors to velocity, both in terms of bat speed and also turn to throw ball velocity, are rotational acceleration. You have to be able to rotate fast. You also learn how to get better at sprinting by sprinting, not by jogging. And if that's fundamentally true, then when it comes to bat speed training, if you want to develop bat speed, you have to train ballistically. You have to move fast. That's just not a thing you can do when the barrel dumper 9000, literally because of its sheer weight and also its swing weight, inhibits your ability to turn it fast. Yes, you're going to lose the barrel and you're going to get all these negative swing adaptations, but you're also just not turning fast enough, right? You're not engaging the systems that allow you to move and train ballistically to increase and exceed your current capacity to do so. It's tomato, potato. So, being aware of that, again, that's why we made this thing. I'm trying to think of what other like nitty-gritty details can I give you about the Power Bat. It's going to be really simple. We're going to have a couple different length configurations. All of them are effectively drop zero, but again, the thing that matters most is the swing weight. It's not the drop. So you might look at it and say, oh, it's a 32-32. That seems really heavy, Devin. Look, man, it's a drop zero, and I can move it around like this. And yes, I'm a 46-year-old full-grown man, but I can't do that with our 37-37 long trainer, right? And I am a full grown man. I can do it with a 32 drop zero power bat for youth because you guys should know the answer by now because of the way that the swing weight is and how that weight is distributed through the barrel and also using our dongle here. Okay, have we gotten to the horse glue part of this? Have I beaten this entirely to death? What else did I not tell you about our power bat? It's going to be cheap. I believe it's going to be $99. Again, better tool, cheaper tool, simpler tool to use. I think all those things are good. And look, man, it's what I want as a parent for my kids. So, and given the opportunity to to make my own thing, that's what I tried to do. So that's our power bat. I feel really, really strongly that this thing is going to be effective for you guys, effective for our players. Certainly, like I got my coaches want to put it on the training floor for Academy tonight. Now that we have the production version, we've been using the heck out of our prototype for a good long while. So I'm really happy, man. I'm really, really happy that we were able to make this thing. I think it's going to be good and effective at developing bat speed. I think it's going to be a simple tool for you guys to be able to implement for your kids because it's not like, hey, it's 3 sets of 8 with this one, and then it's just go out there and swing this thing. Swing it. It's going to make your swing faster. It's not going to come with all these negative swing adaptations. Should be a good tool. I think that's about all I've got on the topic. Beyond that, look, as for a 90-second summation, maybe not 90 seconds, you guys know me. High school baseball started. I got a chance to see my son play his first high school baseball game. It was a jamboree. First real game is on Wednesday, but it's really special. It was really special, and I was really proud of the boy. Happy that I didn't screw it up. And, I think I've been really transparent about the difference between me coaching now versus when I started, some of the things that I learned, some of the lessons that I had to learn, some of the mistakes that I had to make. So I was really happy to see him get through that. But it also definitely came with a little bit of sadness, man, because there are a lot of kids, at least in my local area that I didn't see out there. And that bummed me out. Seeing a lot of the kids that I got the opportunity to coach over the years and having them come up to me and say what's up at the jamboree, seeing their parents, man, it's just that made my heart really full. It filled my cup up. But then reflecting about some of the other kids who, I'm asking a parent like, oh, surprised that so-and-so isn't here. Oh, he quit. That's like, he quit and he's just doing track. Like, look, I'm sure maybe some of you guys are really into like running and stuff, but there's no way track is as fun as baseball. There's just no shot. Seeing kids who, were good and competitive and could really play when they were 11 and 12 and seeing them not play when they were 14, it just, I don't know, bums me out, man. And I'm sure you guys have heard this rant from me many times. I will give you the truncated version for this one. And I guess the only other thing that I'll give you, and maybe this is beneficial, is for years I've had people give me crap about how I am getting video and photos of my kids' athletic endeavors. And it's been everything from people making kind of a joke about it to people getting real personal and like attacking me for it. And when we had the jamboree on Saturday and got a chance to see the boy, play in the first little the short game and then and pitch in the second one. Was thinking about it that night at like 1:00 in the morning, and I was finishing the 6th season of Love Is Blind, thanks to my wife and my brother-in-law and his lovely wife who have gotten us now talking in our group chat about this preposterous show. So shout out to anybody who like doesn't really watch out of a lot of reality television, but gets thrown into the mix on that one because it's a doozy. Um, but I don't know, man. It's just we watching the final episode and watching these people go into a marriage that hopefully is successful for them. I'm not going to turn this into like a Love Is Blind recap podcast. Um, but I really just started thinking about all the memories that I've been able to catalog and collect of my kids throughout their lives, period. And some of that, a decent chunk of that is through sports as well. And I have, I've had moments on a field where like, I don't know, I'm just like, well, I'm not going to get video here. I don't need it. And then invariably something cool happens. And afterwards I just feel like punching myself in the face. But I did get video of my boy doing his thing on Saturday. And I wrote this thing that night at 1:00 in the morning. It's pretty brief. No, I won't put my camera down. I've got pictures and videos of him doing the thing he loves most since he was born. Not playing a game, but playing the game for no reason than his own joy. I desperately want to remember this and every other part of how he grows up. And baseball, for better or worse, is a huge part of it for only this short amount of time. I want to capture, catalog, and remember these moments, like I will for every other thing he experiences in this life, so long as I'm around to see it. So no, I won't put my camera down. And I would guess that the thing that probably made me go that direction of thinking about that experience probably also was influenced by Love Is Blind. Because one of the characters on that show who kind of got like painted as like the villain arc is a dude who lost his dad when his dad was like 46. And I turned 47 this year. And I think wrapping your brain around that, that aspect of adulthood and that aspect of parenting and really realizing that like, the ride's going to end someday. I think gives you some pretty valuable perspective to think about how you want to live in these moments, and I posted it on Twitter this morning and strangely, like a lot of people that responded, or maybe not a lot, a decent chunk of people that responded were like giving me advice that I didn't ask for, but like, I don't know, it's all good. And one of the guys was like, hey, somebody's like, oh, your child just wants you to be present. So like, get your eyes out of your phone. It's like, no, you don't understand. I've been doing this for long enough that like, I'm very adept at like, I'll put the camera here, make sure that I'm getting everything in my frame. And then I watch with my own eyes. I experience my child's life through my eyes. I just have a record of it on my phone or in a camera that I'm using. So trust me, I am entirely present in my children's lives, and I am very grateful that I get a chance to like be there with them, man. I'm not living vicariously. I'm just like, I get a chance to like participate in this, I don't know, secondhand joy. Is that a thing? Can we make that a thing? Yeah. It brings me joy to see them find joy. Gives me perspective when I see them struggle. Obviously, I try to provide context for those moments. I couldn't get through an episode of this podcast without using the word context, but it's just such a joyful thing to watch them be themselves and win and lose and struggle, and it's great. Like I guess the only amusing thing that I can tell you guys is, we had a meeting with the high school coaches the night before. Coaches are great, and they very publicly said in the parent meeting, like, hey, look, just don't, you're not bringing sandwiches and snacks to your kids in the dugout. And like, yeah, I firmly agree, because these kids need to learn how to be self-serving in this way. So my wife and I had a quick talk about that. Not that we were like huge offenders of that other, but just like, you got to understand that like it's high school. We've reached the point that it is appropriate to let these kids fail if that's a result of the choices or lack of preparation that they've made. I'm fine with that. Sometimes you got to learn the hard lesson. Um, so my kid pitches in the second game of this jamboree, and then as soon as he gets off the field, before they have the bottom half of that inning, he's coming over to me, finds me in the stands. How hard was I throwing? It's like, get your narrow little behind back in the flippin' dugout. We are not going to have this conversation. And, look. Sorry. Not too long ago, I told the story that was told to me about Brandon Mann, Driveline OG, who's, right before he would get ready to go in season, he'd be in our launch pad doing live ABs, and he would turn the tech off because he wanted to focus on the results of the game. And I've told this story to my kids, and I thought that it like really sunk in, and as a dad, I had made a really good point. And then of course my kid comes over during the half inning. He's like, "Dad, how hard did I throw?" I'm like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to tell this story again. But hey, man, I also can't blame the kid for wanting feedback. And I'm certainly not going to try to criminalize that feedback. I guess the only thing I'm trying to say is that, like, if you get really good results and you're getting swings and misses and punchies and, like, your stuff is playing, then, like, maybe we can have that conversation about how hard you throw after the game. Just an idea. I don't know. Maybe this is, like, my old man is coming out. I'm definitely reached the Devin is doing this podcast by himself and is starting to ramble point, so I should probably wrap it up. So yeah, thank you guys for joining me for this very long-winded and detailed explanation of bat speed training and the exclusive premiere to you guys, because this thing isn't going to be on sale for probably a couple weeks. We're not going to have any marketing stuff out for it for probably a couple weeks, but you guys, because you are loyal listeners of the world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast, maybe the only baseball podcast in the world that actually like makes products, we got a chance to talk in depth about the Power Bat. I'm really excited for when it comes out. It'll be out in March. It's going to be $99. We'll be able to pair that thing with the Youth Underload Smash Bat, and like, look, now we have two bats for less than $200. Look, it's a complete training package right here. You pair that with some of our mini hitting plyos, wiffle balls. I mean, maybe not the wiffle balls. Mini hitting plyos, regular hitting plyos. Again, you can hit regular baseballs with these things. Just don't do it out of a machine. You're going to get better. I want your kids to get better. That's what we make this stuff for. So that's all I got. Next week, Jeremy is going to be back, so you won't have to suffer through me blathering ad nauseum about esoteric stuffs like swing weight and moment of inertia. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but it'll be fun. It'd be good to have my brother back here. And yeah, that's all I got. My name is Devin. I'm down by law. Catch you next time.